Hi, my name is Gaynor Yancey, and I'm one of the lead teachers in the specialized area of community practice. We're so glad that you're thinking about perhaps this area of practice to come into when you start to think about your MSW at the Garland School of Social Work. Are you a person that would much prefer to be with a individual, one-on-one relationship type of conversation, practice with clinical skills? And if you are, that's great. However, if you are a person that likes to think about the bigger systems, the groups, the teams, the type of systems changes that perhaps our society calls on us to think through and how we can do that, then I would tell you to start to think about this specialized area of practice. There are two or three things that we focus on in this specialized area. One of the first ones is the underpinning probably that we would talk about. You might say, well, that's the foundation. Somebody else could say it's the umbrella, the overarching umbrella. So it all depends which way you look at this. But leadership is one of the first things that we start to think through. We want ourselves to know ourselves well. So we will do several personality inventories. We'll talk about those things together, about where our strengths are, and that's what we're looking for, is where are our strengths and how do we maximize those. The second thing that we start to think about through that leadership development is then we go back very clearly to the types of things that we learn in generalist practice in terms of how do we assess our client. So now our client happens to be, more often than not, it's going to be a client system. And that client system might be called a neighborhood, it could be called a nonprofit agency, it could be called a community of practice of some sort, it could be a family of certain individuals, it could be certain numbers of organizations, it could be government itself. But we will have client systems that we talk about more often than we talk about just an individual client. It could even be, if we're in an agency and we're working with a volunteer group, it could be that group could be our client system. So in all of these, what we're thinking about is how our leadership starts to impact those systems that we start to think through that we're now interacting with. Another thing that goes on with this is what we call consensus building, if you will. And so consensus building is not the easy kinds of things of, okay, do we all agree about this? But rather it's how have we built rapport with each other? Have we seen what we've seen the same way? Would we go at forming a plan of intervention the same way? Would we think about it being the same thing? And if we don't, then this consensus building of taking the skills that we know of how to work with this group who might think very differently about this opportunity than this group might think. How do we start to think and hear together what everybody's saying without making a judgment about that in a negative way, but rather finding the strength of each view, if you will, and bringing those together so that all together they come in to one view, which is really for the good of how we see the change occurring. And then the last thing that we would think through together as far as even community planning is that we also believe strongly in emergent planning. And so emergent planning sounds like this. Instead of our going in, I'm going to use a piece of paper here, instead of our going in with a plan as a community organizer or as a community developer and say, this is the plan, all of you who are out here, will you approve this? Emergent planning looks certainly very different than this rational approach of going in with a pre-formed plan. And it looks very different than even having done the logic model that we might have been taught when we were in generalist practice. And so out of that comes that we're talking about flexibility, adaptability, of being able to work in diverse contexts, because when we work in diverse contexts, we're going to also get a diversity of opinion. And so what we believe is that the engagement of our stakeholders is key to how plans start to emerge and how we start to hear each other. That diversity becomes extremely important. And again, it's going to come from the inside out instead of top down or instead of outside in to bring about systems change. We're going to be thinking about it coming from inside out. So we would love for you to consider coming into this specialized area of practice of community practice. It takes in administration, it takes in the type of practice where you would like to be out, perhaps like I was, walking the streets and finding out who might be out there for me to talk to. And just looking around, seeing who's there, talking with people, hearing hearts of what they would love to see their lives like. and what would they like to see their community look like, and then putting all that together at the same time. Okay, we get to do it with the people themselves, and I can't think of anything better. Thank you for even thinking about coming into this specialized area of practice, and I hope to see you one day in class.